All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Construction Hall of Fame podcast. Today, I am super stoked to have Cecilia Kucharski, who's a VP at Webcor, on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me, Cecilia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Like we always like to kick the show off, would you mind giving the audience some context and a bit more about your story as to how you got to where you're at in your career today?
Sure. I went to college for construction engineering and management at Purdue University, and I went straight into the construction industry from there, having done a couple internships throughout college, and then I moved to the Bay Area to work for a large contractor. I was in the Bay Area. I got there in 96, I'm sorry. And then I came down to San Diego in 2003. So I started in the industry as a project engineer and then worked my way up as project manager, project director. And then I segued over to pre-construction and estimating. And I was a pre-construction director for about 7 years. And then I moved into business development, business acquisition, overseeing marketing and PR and communications, which was a nice change for me. It was very different from what I had done over the last 15, 20 years. And I enjoyed that a lot. It was different. It was fun. Working on business planning, business strategy, the go, no-go process, and, market focus and client focus. And then I moved back into pre-construction and estimating, overseeing pre-construction and estimating. And then I moved back into operations. And now I oversee operations for Webcor for San Diego.
Love that. Would you mind sharing about the go, no-go practices?
Oh, that's where you look at an opportunity either before it comes out as a request for proposal, or you just know that it's coming and decide, is this the right project for our company? Is it the right project for our company, and can we provide the client the best value? Sometimes it's a great opportunity, but you're not in a position to respond well because you don't have available staff, or you don't have the right staff for that product type, or sometimes it's not aligned with your business model. Say it's to build multifamily, but you're not a multifamily builder, for example. So in the industry, we call it go, no go.
Makes sense.
It's a business decision. Yeah.
Crystal clear. Pretty interesting. You've touched so many sides of the industry, including business acquisitions. I think that's a really interesting topic in terms of talking about acquiring businesses, because you're with a company who's expanded pretty rapidly throughout California. So it comes to a point where like grabbing up market share becomes a way to strategically expand. Is that pretty much the thought process behind the acquisitions that you were running?
Yeah, I kind of fell into business acquisition and business development organically. When I was a pre-construction director, I was in front of clients a lot, talking about their projects and the cost of their projects and the schedule and logistics and everything that goes with it. And I found that I was just client facing a lot. And then I started to get involved in industry organizations, and one thing led to another. And then all of a sudden I was doing business development and working on what I'll call the front end of the business quite a bit. And when I had the opportunity to segue into business acquisitions, it was kind of an organic fit. So it wasn't intentional, it kind of happened on accident. But speaking of Webcor is a California-based company. So, we like to think that we're, a California builder focused on California. So we have offices in the Bay Area, Los Angeles, and San Diego with the intent of supporting our clients up and down the state.
Yeah, it sounds like you got pretty much the whole state covered. And so, it's actually pretty interesting for me to hear about someone like yourself who's so well-rounded. You've touched so many different parts of the business, coming up from PE, and actually going before that, when we talked before, you were sharing about your summer internships that you worked on when you were in school. Yeah. How would you say those internships helped to jumpstart your career in the right direction?
Internships are unique because each one is very different based upon what team you're working with and what projects you're doing. And every internship is a different experience. I'm really involved with the internship program at Purdue University, and I mentor young interns every summer. And what I've learned is that the industry as a whole has gotten a lot better about what we do with our interns and giving them a well-rounded experience. But for me, it's a lot of it really bridged the gap from what you learn in the classroom to the real world. And I would say that I learned a lot, but then when I graduated college and started my first job, I still had a lot more to learn. So I did 3 internships, mostly in the Southeast, and each one of them were very different. I worked on estimating pre-construction. I worked in the field, building a manufacturing facility. I did basically it's a project engineering training experience as a general rule. And so there's most college kids try to get internships. The Purdue program is unique in that they help you get the internships, and it's part of your diploma. So you do 3 consecutive summers. So when you graduate, you're a little bit more well-rounded.
That's so interesting. It's like a lot of times people will have all this book knowledge, like you said, but when you actually go into the field, it's kind of like, whoa, this is a bit of a new world, or this is something like I have a lot to learn that's like more in the trenches type learning, experiential learning, versus being able to learn from the books, which books are great. School is great. I'm not a hater on books or school, but at the end of the day, it does sound like these internships really able to help potentially give you clarity around maybe where you wanted to take your career, because you got a taste of estimating, you got a taste of being in the field. So did that help give you more clarity versus if you were just to have entered the field without doing an internship?
Yeah, I think so. Like I spent one summer, we were renovating a shopping mall in Atlanta, and I spent a summer doing the pre-construction side of the business at that time, and I was young, and that was back when we filed everything manually and faxed everything, and everything went through snail mail, and I hated it. I wanted to go out and build. And it's ironic that years later, I spent years in pre-construction and estimating, and I loved it. So everyone evolves throughout our career. And one thing I love about our industry is the more experience you have and the older you are in your career, or just the longer you are in this business, the more you learn. And so it's one of those industries that you just get better and better.
Love it. Like fine wine.
Yeah, like fine wine. That's how we are in this business. Yeah.
I love it. And it's something that's interesting to me is like helping the industry level up as a whole and helping everyone in the industry push forward in some way or another. And like my thought is with these podcasts, if we could just help touch one person, one business, help them get to the next level, whatever they're trying to do, that's a win for us, right? And a lot of times people will go about, let's just say, building an internship program. And they'll just say, hey, let's just build an internship program. But they don't necessarily start with the end in mind, if that makes sense, right? Like they don't know exactly what they want great to look like as a result of building an internship program. So what would you say are like the tactical or like the strategic outcomes you like to have when running an internship program? Like what are your goals at the end of it?
Yeah, we have a dedicated operations team that runs our internship program, and they partner with HR to make it happen. And so it's really well-rounded, and it's led from ops. And we work really closely with each university or trade, if we're pulling from trades, and ensure that each student has a really robust internship experience. And we think about that experience moving forward. And we work with the students on where do they want to go? What do they want to do? And we round them out that way. But we're a builder first contractor. So we typically like to see our interns out in the field on project sites. And we partner them up with the team and make sure that they have the right experience and get to know all the right people, and then have that support system, both with other interns, with team building events and things like that, but also other professionals that are there looking out for them and giving them a good experience.
Got it. And it's kind of interesting, actually, because I'm a recruiter, right? So I poke around. I'm always looking at people's career paths and whatnot. And sometimes I'll find that a company has built an internship program, but when I look at all the people who went through their internship program, it's like right when they're done with the internship, they go to a new company. And it was kind of like the internship program helped kickstart their career. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, is the goal to have people actually ascend within your company in an internship program? Is that the end goal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say most companies in the industry feel that way. You invest in that student for 3 summers, sometimes 4, depending on their college path, and you want them to stay there. We bring interns in based upon their potential, because they're so young when you first, interview them, but also their cultural fit. And we absolutely want them to stay. It doesn't always work out, to your point. It's a very tough market right now for workforce availability. And so a lot of the students, if they really are a top-notch student, will get multiple offers. And sometimes it's, where do they want to live in the country, family situations. There's all sorts of things that come into play, but we like to think we have a good retention rate, and we strive for that.
That's phenomenal. And it almost seems to me when I ask the question, it's almost like a loaded question. Did you want to invest in all these people to go through 3 summers with you just to have them go to another company? It's like, probably not. But then that leads me to my second question, which is, where do you think some internships maybe miss the mark? And how do you think, where do you think people miss the mark on that?
Where companies miss the mark, or the students?
Yeah, excuse me, I meant to say the companies.
The companies. I can't speak for other companies. I do know, with my involvement with Purdue, and I specifically work with women that are women students within the construction engineering and management department. So we have a mentorship program that we run every summer to align them up with a woman in the industry that's a Purdue alumni that can be there for them and mentor and guide them. And one of the, a lot of things we talk about is, when we do surveys of the students, what kind of questions do we ask? And a lot of it is, what was your experience like? How were you treated? Did you get the experience? And for example, I had an intern a couple years ago. I still mentor her. She's been out of school for a few years, and she's really happily employed now. And she had an internship where she had a good experience, but she didn't get the same experience as some of the male interns that were working with her. We don't see that as much anymore, especially here on the left coast, but it does happen. And so that's when you have to find the right fit for yourself as a student. So that's maybe an area where some companies may struggle more than others in that regard, for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right. And I'm kind of reverse engineering what you said. And it sounds like communication is something that's been a really big piece of these internship programs. It's actually getting real-world feedback from people who go through your program, so you can continue to improve the program. And you're really getting like a look in the mirror as to how you're performing, versus people who would just have an internship program, maybe not get feedback, and then look, hindsight 2020, like, what's going on? Why aren't these people retaining in my company? It's like you're taking more proactive versus a reactive approach.
Right. Yeah, it's really important.
Got it. Okay. Well, we talked a bit before, and you actually talked a little bit about mentorship right now. And you brought up something that was really interesting for me. It was the difference between a sponsor and a mentor. What does that mean for you?
The difference between a mentor and a mentor is someone that's there for you, to mentor you, help guide you, just be a listener when you need to bounce ideas or just vet, And a sponsor is someone that speaks out for you and helps you grow in your career, even when you're not in the room. So at the executive level, or with the leadership team, whether you're part of leadership or not, but when you're not in the room, they're advocating for you. So it's an advocate. Sometimes a mentor can also be an advocate, but they're not exclusive to each other. And they're both important.
Yeah, and it sounds like to some people this could be semantics, but at the end of the day, it's really not, because depending on how you look at it and how you view the two words, there's an important differentiation. It's like there really is. It sounds like you would want a mentor and a sponsor in a perfect world, right? Like someone who goes to bat for you when you're in the room, who is there to mentor, guide you, coach you, but also someone who goes to bat for you when you're not there.
Right, and it's usually more than one person, right? And I think about the mentors I've had throughout my career. I have multiple mentors, and they all provide me mentorship in different ways, and they're all very important to me. And then I have sponsors as well, multiple sponsors, and I hope to always have more, right? And it's building those relationships and partnerships means so much more than the technical skill sets that we each have. You like to think when you have people on your team that are intelligent and hardworking, they can learn anything. What you're looking for is cultural fit and partnership and collaboration.
That's something I think a lot of people can learn from. Just listen to what you just said, because so many people I talk to are looking for 10 out of 10. They need to fit 10 out of 10 boxes, even if they're earlier on in their career. And it's like, if they have the want, the drive to be successful, if they're a cultural fit, if they have relevant background experience, for example, if you're looking for a certain type of role where you're looking for that fitness, it opens up your ability to recruit different types of talent from different avenues or walks of the industry. If you're able to have the people within your industry, within your organization, who actually will mentor these people, who will teach them maybe a little bit of the technical side of a job when they fit everything else, and there's just a couple pieces that would be helpful for them to know. So I think what you just said is actually something a lot of companies could take notes on, and it could be a really valuable lesson actually to implement. Easier said than done sometimes, and there's always a line, right? There's a line of like how much technical expertise versus like the cultural fit, and like what are your current needs and what are your current resources for mentoring. So you have like a more of a holistic picture of what really is involved, but just generally speaking, great point you just made. Great point.
Right.
And I'm also wondering, for you talked about some really impactful sponsors you had throughout your career. What would you say stood out about the most impactful sponsors that you had?
I was thinking about that just as we were talking. I've had sponsors. I think I guess I'll talk about what it meant to me at the time. Not at the time, I didn't say, "Oh, this person's a sponsor for me." I thought, this person's taking care of me, which is a little bit different. But it's kind of in hindsight, it really was a sponsorship. But when I was a young project manager at Webcor, one of our senior VPs who handled the whole business unit, he put me on projects with his number one client. So I led projects with his number one client. And in hindsight, he had a high level of trust in me. And then he was also a sponsor for me. Even when I moved to San Diego, that client I started in the Bay Area, and that client had projects in San Diego. And, that I was the first call that was made on that. And, so I think he did a lot in the executive room when I wasn't there to support me and sponsor me. And then, when I was asked to, previously in my career, when I was asked to take over to lead the pre-construction and estimating department, that was a sponsorship, because it was not a position that was even on my radar. I wasn't doing that at the time. I was doing, overseeing the business planning and the business acquisition, as we just spoke. And so it came out of the blue, and I realized I found out later there was some sponsorship happening in the background, advocating for me to take on that position. So I think that sometimes it comes in little small pieces, and sometimes it's really obvious. I guess those are my two best examples.
Right. And then to kind of piggyback on that, let's just say I'm a young industry professional who's never had a sponsor, or maybe I've been in the business for a while and I've never had a sponsor. What would your insights or advice be for someone who's looking to find that sponsor? What tips would you give them?
Sometimes sponsorship is earned. It's one thing to look for mentors. I've had people come to me and say, "Will you be my mentor?" And it's got to be a two-way street. It's got to feel like the right fit for mentorship. That one's a little bit easier. I think sponsorship happens through trust and growing the relationship. Sometimes I think when people really hunt out sponsorship, it's almost like they're trying to butter up to certain people to get where they want to be in their career. And so sometimes that can be really poorly received. So I think there's a fine line there. But it is important, I think, to look around and say, do I have people that are sponsors for me? Sometimes you do and you don't realize it until you really think about it. And if you don't have a lot of sponsorship where you are, then maybe you're in a work environment that's not as satisfying for you as you realized. So I do think it's important to be happy to know that people got your back.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. And I think about it from this frame as well. It's like, if you want to earn something in life, you want something from someone else. I found that just going into situations without actually wanting something in return, but just providing value up front and showing that you are the type of person who's trustworthy, you are the type of person who goes to bat for your team, you want to learn, you want to grow, you're willing to put in the work to be successful. I found a lot of the time, like me looking for mentors or sponsors in my career, or me when people have asked me for like help or sponsorship, the people I want to help the most are the ones who want the most for themselves and are willing to earn it and are willing to put in the work and to earn people's trust by actually doing the actions it takes to earn someone's trust, not just saying, hey, I'd like a sponsor at the end of the day, right? Because everyone wants a sponsor. But it's like you put it, how do you earn a sponsor who really wants to go to bat for you? I think going back to it, it's like, how can you give so much value that someone wants to be your sponsor at the end of the day, if that makes sense?
Right, right. And I think that's really important. I think about, how fortunate I've been to be with Webcor for so long. And um, it's what I'm happy about is the environment in which Webcor has created as a whole, as a leadership team, and it instills in all of us and every employee, is that everyone just does a good job and works together and collaborates, and we don't have people vying for things. People aren't vying for positions or maneuvering. And when opportunity arises internally, it's a really transparent and open process where everybody can have an opportunity to interview for that position in a really open, transparent way. And it's amazing what I've seen as we've had internal succession planning and growth for individuals and how well received it is for all the people that have participated in it, as well as the other employees that are around it. And I think that's a culture that not every company has. I think a lot of companies may have, not a lot, I've seen companies have a culture where there is a lot of maneuvering and people striving to get something versus just let it happen because you earned it and you're a hard worker and you're a good partner to everybody else.
Mm-hmm. And in a culture or in a time of so many people wanting instant gratification, it's nice to have a team culture that helps you realize that it's not all about instant gratification. Because in this industry, instant gratification means you want to be a senior PM. You've been a PM for a year and a half. You make a career move to somebody who else, another company who would for some reason give you the senior PM title when arguably you weren't ready for it. That could cost the company millions of dollars making that mistake. And if you were just patient and you learned from sponsors and mentors and you had a little more patience about your career, that mistake might have not happened. And those are things that aren't really fun to go through at the end of the day. So I think it's a good message to be able to spread to the community that sometimes patience is a good thing. Sometimes not always looking for that next move today or tomorrow is actually what's best for people. And they might not see it in the short term, but if you think more like, what do I want for myself in the next 3 to 5 years in my career, the next 5 to 10 years? Can I be provided that with a team like Webcor? It's super valuable for you to bring up succession planning. I think the ball is missed so many times with companies who, A, don't communicate what the growth path looks like and what it takes to get there. And if they do, B, not living up to that. And that's a huge reason for turnover, making false promises, people living up to their end of the bargain, but then the company not living up to their end of the bargain. So I'm curious, what does your process of succession planning look like?
We have pretty clear succession planning, and it's articulated early and often. Matt Rossi just moved into our CEO position, and he was in transition for it for a year. And Jess Peterson, our previous CEO, is still with us and is retiring mid-year. And so we, have really transparent overlap and communication and training for that succession planning. And it's not just at the C-suite level, seen it at all levels within leadership and within the company. And I was thinking about what we were just talking about, the instant gratification and, the younger generation looks at promotions and titles very differently than, say, the Gen Xers or the baby boomers. I think it's also important for the companies to reward people that earn it, regardless of their age or their tenure, or their, the thought process is that, certain people are entitled to it because of maybe their tenure or their position. So one thing I can say that I'm really proud of at Webcor, and I'm sure there's other companies that may do that as well, is that, when someone earns it and should have that title and that position, they get it. And growing from within means a lot to the employees when they see it. And they say, well, if that person earned it and worked really hard and got it, then I can do the same.
100%.
So you have to provide opportunity as well, I guess is my point.
And on top of that, I'm sure it helps you attract talent as well. Because when you're able to have case studies within your company, it's like, hey, if you come to our company, here's 5 examples of people who have been in your shoes, who we've put on a career path, and they've actually hit their career path when they hit the milestones that we talked about them hitting, and we actually lived up to our word. It's a lot easier for a candidate to consider an opportunity with your company if you actually have proof of this, if it's not just talk, but if you actually can show this, which you can. I'm assuming that helps with talent acquisition as well.
Absolutely. And I think for anyone in this industry, if you look around at your leadership and people that are getting titles and promotions within your firm, if you're really proud of those people and you feel like they deserved it, then you're in the right place. Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel otherwise, then maybe give me a call.
Absolutely. I love that. Okay. So something I loved talking about on our last call was the topic of failure. And really how, talking to leaders, a lot of them actually got to where they are today on the back of failure, right? But it's really not about failing all the time. It's about how do you learn from failure? How do you grow from failure? Kind of like the whole Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school basketball team and then going on to becoming arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, right? How would you say failure has impacted your career?
Oh, it absolutely has. I think it's like anything until you've lived it, you don't know the benefits of it. I think I was sharing with you previously that I once heard a global CEO speak from a international contractor, and he was talking about how he had gotten fired from that very same firm when he was a young civil engineer, and now he's the global CEO, right? And that was really impactful for me at the time when I heard it, and but I didn't think much about it, right, until I failed a couple times. And and the thing about failure is it's not like a one-time deal and you can check it off your list and go, okay, that will never happen again. Sometimes you fail multiple times. And I think when you can fail and be supported by your mentors, your peers, the people that your sponsors and your trusted allies, and then you grow from it and you pick yourself back up and you do it again, and I've shared with you, I've had a couple failures, I've had failures with team where I wasn't aligned with some of my peers, and it ended up being a failure for me where, ultimately I ended up not staying with that employer. I've had failures where I, worked for a company that wasn't culturally aligned with me, and I wasn't my best self when I was there. I was in situations and environments that weren't aligned with me, and then the way I handled it wasn't the best. And I don't think I was who I should have been, or how I viewed myself. And looking back on it, it was such a great experience, right? Because ultimately it brought me back to Webcor. And then when I got back to Webcor, I went, oh yeah, that's why I was so happy when I was here before, because this is an environment that's supportive and transparent and aligned with me culturally and in so many ways. And if I fail here, I know that there'll be some grace about it. And hopefully it'll be really small increments because they won't allow me to fail because they're so supportive. And I think that's part of it too. If you fail severely, it's probably you didn't probably have the right support in the first place, right? Hopefully failure is small because others are watching your back a little bit. But it happens to the best of us. Totally.
Yeah. And something else I think that employers and employees alike should keep in mind is the idea that, let's just say a failure is a mistake. Let's just say you make a mistake on a project. Something got messed up. It didn't go ideal. But what you're doing, if you're the type of person who grows from your mistakes, is as an employer, you're investing in your talent. That's a mistake that might have cost you, but that's an expense that having this person with your team long term, it's a lot less likely that they'll make the same mistake twice, as long as you make the point to actually help them learn from the mistake and grow from the mistake. And as an employee, keep a growth mindset to where you can't always be afraid to fail. Like I hear a lot of the best leaders I talk about say, I want to give my team enough rope to explore and to walk out a little bit, but not enough rope to hang themselves. And that's actually someone named Brent Kelly, he's over at Corgan. He had let me know this quote initially, and I was like, wow, that's so powerful. And so as an employee, if you keep the mentality of, I'm going to grow from this mistake, I'm not going to let this mistake define me, but rather I'm going to be able to keep growing in my career as a result of making this mistake. And I'm also going to help others around me not to make the same mistake, which will make my team a better place. That will then reinforce culture, and that will reinforce growth throughout the whole team, just by not treating the failure as, hey, you're fired. Hey, I actually made an investment into you, an investment into our company by helping mentor you through this failure.
Yeah, it is a cultural thing for sure. Some companies are better structured than others to support their employees and allow them that rope, but not let them fall. And I think from my experience, the failures I had as a project engineer were minimal compared to the types of failures I can make now. So the failure grows as you grow in your career. I mean, the magnitude of the failure can be much more drastic. And so it is really important. At this level, you're not growing as much technically. You're growing more on the people skills, the business skills, and the leadership skills. So the failure is different. It's a different kind of failure, but they're all failures.
Yeah, it sounds like a risk-reward type situation. It's like you're taking smaller risks at the beginning of your career with smaller potential rewards. Hypothetically, not to disparage or like talk down upon the rewards that are early on in the career, because you're not going to get to where you are later if you don't hit these milestones and grow every step of the way. But as a VP, you can have home runs, knock it out of the park, but a mistake might be a little more magnified, or like a failure, quote unquote, might be a little more magnified, right?
Right.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, then actually transitioning into the next piece, which I'm really curious to hear about. What has it been like, the process of expanding the San Diego unit? What have been some of the challenges you faced? How have you enjoyed the building process? Would you mind talking to me about that?
Sure. It's been really exciting. There's some silver lining with the pandemic for all of us, with the remote working and the Zoom meetings and the Teams meetings and all of that we didn't have before, right? So everything was in person before. So I think that has actually been a really great thing for me. Like when I first came back and started to expand our San Diego presence, was to be able to have that constant connection to our other offices and really leverage that support. So Webcor is really flat as a company, and we're really transparent. And so I have a very big support system as I grow the office. So that's the most exciting part for me. And then also, leveraging some of our builders from our other offices that have really diverse expertise that I'm excited about. And then the people that we brought on board locally and that we continue to grow with for our local presence. So our goal is to really replicate what we're doing in LA and what we're doing in the Bay Area for diversity and project types, but customized for the San Diego market, of course.
Yeah, definitely. And what would you say is your exact roles and responsibilities, or your scope of work as a VP building out the market? What is your focus?
Most of my focus is building team and building relationships with clients, continuing to grow and build relationships with clients. It was really exciting to come back to Webcor and continue to talk to the clients I've known for years and let them know that I'm back at Webcor. So that was the most fun. And then continuing to grow our brand awareness. We've been pretty prominent in San Diego over the last several years in the federal contracting space, working for Navy and NAFAC Southwest, doing work on the military bases. But we haven't done a whole lot outside of that. And so expanding into the other markets and regrowing brand awareness is probably the biggest. I wouldn't say it's a challenge, but it's my biggest focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. It sounds like a fun mission you're on at the end of the day. For me, I get passionate about my work. So when I have something in front of me that some people might perceive as a challenge, I'm like, okay, it's a challenge, sure, but I love it. This is what I'm here for. I love what I'm doing. So, it's all about perception at the end of the day, right? And I really appreciate your mentality around that. It's like, you're here to win, you're here to compete, you're expanding, you're growing, you have a supportive team. And that actually leads me to a question that I think our audience would really love to hear. So let's just say I'm an executive leader. I'm a leader who, everyone in the market would love to have on their team, right? The person who's been employed with their company for the last several years, they're doing a phenomenal job with their current company, they're probably happy where they're at. What would be a reason that someone like that would want to consider a position with Webcor?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, we're on the ground floor. So depends on your company and your situation, but if you've been there a long time, you might have more opportunity at Webcor right now in San Diego, because we're on the ground floor and we're building, our core team of which we're going to grow from. So that's the most exciting part, I think, and I found that has been the most exciting for the people that are brought on board. And then also, I'd say I would, kind of reiterate some of the things I mentioned around culture and support. I think most employees that have been with a company for a long time, the biggest challenge is the change, right? People in general typically don't like change. So I think it's understanding what is this experience going to look like compared to the experience I have right now. So it's understanding that support system that we have. It's the employee benefits. It's the cultural fit, and then the excitement around the actual work. So it's a little bit of all of that. So usually I find when I talk with employees about what we're doing and the opportunities, they get pretty excited. So that's what I would say.
And sometimes, as we all know, some people just don't want to take a conversation. They're like, no matter what you tell me, I don't want to hear it. But here's something that I'd like to say on the flip side of that. Is I've had, earlier on in my career, I was doing some marketing, like demand gen campaigns for contractors. I was working with a guy worth over $500 million, and he gave me some really interesting advice, which was don't ever turn down an opportunity to have a conversation that you think might be able to help your career in some way, shape, or form. If you think it's somewhat relevant, why not build the relationship? Why not at least hear out the opportunity? And I hear candidates sometimes who, and hey, to each their own. I'm not here to tell someone how to live their life, but some people are just like, hey, I don't even want to hear about an opportunity. I don't want to hear about anything. You might not know that the opportunity that's about to be presented to you could literally change your life, your family's life, the trajectory of your career. Someone might be treating you well. That's totally great and fine. And they'll probably still treat you well after the fact. But the thing is, if you don't hear about the opportunity, you're really shutting the door for your career in terms of growth or potential. When the conversation won't hurt. Almost everyone I talk to, they're not going to have a conversation with you. Like, for example, you're not going to go have a conversation with a candidate and then go tell the whole market, hey, guess what? I just interviewed XYZ and this is exactly who it was. And, it's really the perspective of everyone wants to have a good, positive reputation. Your reputation wouldn't be great if you went talking to the whole market about candidates you spoke with. But at the end of the day, if someone spoke with you and they got to know who you are as a leader and what this opportunity looks like, a lot of people who are quote-unquote comfortable and happy, like 99% of the people I talk to on a day-to-day basis, they would benefit from talking to you, and they might likely be able to take their career to the next level with what you're building. So I would just some 2 cents from my end. If Cecilia reaches out to you, take the call. Come on now, take the call.
I think it is important to understand when someone's really happy that that's okay too. I do appreciate what you're saying, and I absolutely want them to take my call. But at the same time, they have to be true to themselves first and foremost. And I always tell candidates when I meet with them, and I usually try to meet with them informally first, just to have coffee or drink or something, just to kind of get to know each other, because it needs to be a cultural fit and it's a two-way street. Right? I'm interviewing you, but you should be interviewing me also. And you should ask me the hard questions and see how I respond. You should understand my business plan and that I do have, a focused plan that is going to be successful. Right? All those things.
I'm so in agreement with that. I think that's one of the most important parts of the process for me, because companies say they want to recruit top talent. Every company I talk to wants to recruit top talent. But at the end of the day, what a lot of companies don't realize, and this is not to talk down on anybody by any means, and I hope it's not perceived that way, but there's two types of people in the market. It's either someone who's running away from an opportunity and someone who wants to walk toward an opportunity. And a lot of the time, if you find candidates who are running away from opportunities, or they don't have a job right now, they're the type of candidate who is not really they don't need that two-way interview street as much as someone who's been employed, who is very happy where they're at. they need that two-way street of conversation at a different level because they don't need your job. They realistically don't need it. They need to want your job. So if you take the mentality of having a two-way consultative approach when you speak with candidates to actually help them figure out, will this be the best opportunity for you? And will this be a great opportunity for us together? It's like baby steps when you're talking to candidates in that scenario. You can't expect them to say, hey, yeah, let me sign up for a 5-step interview process. Let me put my 2 weeks resignation in the 4th interview before you even put in an offer. That's not going to happen. It's just not likely going to happen. So I love your mentality around that, and I'm sure that's definitely helping you in talent acquisition.
Yeah.
Love it. So moving on, I'm really curious because, finding great culture fit is so important in your career. Finding the wrong culture fit, like I'm having someone on the show in a couple of weeks who has a really interesting story about his start in construction. He was with a couple cultures that were not inclusive. He did not feel like he was able to fit in there, and he was almost giving up on the construction industry. It's a really powerful story. At his next company, he found that mentor and that sponsor who really took him under his wing and totally changed his mentality. And now he says construction changed his life. And construction is the best thing that could have happened to him. But that just goes to show, one man's trash is another man's treasure. One scenario could be great for someone, not so great for the other. So and I'm not saying you had a bad experience or anything like that, but what was your experience leaving Webcor and then going back to Webcor?
Right. Leaving Webcor, actually, I feel like was the best thing I ever did for myself, because now that I'm back, I'm able to provide different perspectives, versus having been here, 25 years. I left coming out of the recession because I wanted to stay in San Diego, and I was worried about where we were with the business plan for San Diego at that time. And we were mostly focused on federal work, and I didn't want to do federal work. Selfishly, this was back when I was in ops, pre-con. And I learned a lot with the other companies that around, different things, process, market sectors. I learned some different market sectors that I hadn't done before. I learned I learned a lot of different things. But what I also learned about myself is what I needed for cultural alignment. And I thought I had it before at those other companies, but I really didn't. And I didn't realize how it's like I've grown as a person to be more astute to what I need. I think I thought I knew what I needed, but as I've gotten older, I've learned that there are certain things that I will and won't fit in culturally. I need an environment where everyone's completely transparent and open with each other all the time. I need an environment where my voice is always welcome to be heard. I need an environment where I can really push the envelope on change, because I'm naturally kind of a change agent, especially around lean processes and procedures and things like that. I need an environment where people always have my back. There's all these little things. I need an environment where I can really challenge us internally around getting better around diversity, equity, inclusion, or sustainability, or whatever the topic is. Lean practices, and it doesn't matter what it is. I need all of that every day, all the time, without question. It's almost like an unconditional relationship, an unconditional support. And I think what I learned is that not every company has that. And then I've also learned that not that the other companies weren't good companies, they just weren't good companies for me. So it could be a great company for other people, just not for me. So I think being true to myself was the one takeaway from that. I don't know if that answers your question, but
most definitely. So it's like you were able to gain self-awareness by maybe venturing a little bit to figure out really what was best for you. Sometimes you don't know until you go out and you venture and you see what else is out there. And then you realize, hey, now I know what's best for me. I might have not known before. I might not have been sure. I might have been maybe curious, as maybe someone would put it. But then you really did learn. And I think that was, it sounds like, really helpful for your career. And sounds like maybe someone would go as far as saying your mental health in your career, like your happiness in your career. I don't know what the right term would be, but it sounds like all that could be relevant for someone listening to this who might be in a similar perspective or situation. So you definitely answered the question, no doubt about it. And for me, you've touched on a lot to talk about culture. And culture is a really big thing that people are focusing on today as recruiting and retaining top talent in their company. And talent in general is becoming more and more important, is because it's really painful to lose great people. These organizations are based on the back of great people. Every building was built in history by people. And so what do we need on our team? Great people. And we don't want to lose them because that's quite expensive and it hurts culture. And there's a lot of things that are, I guess, downsides of that. And I've loved everything you had to say about Webcor's culture, and it seems like you embody that through and through. But you did mention, when I talked to you before, you said culture is a feeling based off, I remember how you put it. You said culture is a feeling based off actions, right? What does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think when you and I were talking, I was having a hard time articulating what it is that just works for me at Webcor and how it just feels right. It's because it's a culture. I think, if you've ever seen this Simon Sinek TED Talk on the power of why, culture is kind of talks to your heart, not your brain, right? It's the non-reasoning part of your body. And so it's harder to define it and put it in words. I think that's what I was talking about. But I think that it is something that you can experience every day in people's actions is the best way to put it in words for me. It's the way we treat our employees. It's our focus on the things that we're true to, what is our purpose, and what are our core values, and those things, and how are they just in your strategic plan? Are those things words, or are those things that you actually back up with data-driven results and actions and continuous improvement, right? Because no one's perfect, right? And we're all trying to get better. But is there that mindset of always doing better and challenging ourselves? So I think that's kind of how it feels for me when I talk about the actions around it.
It makes so much sense. It's like, I heard a funny quote one time. I don't know how real the quote was, but I think it's pretty dang real from my perspective. It's a lot of time companies will put on their website exactly what they want the world to think about their culture and what the idealistic perspective or goal is with building a culture. But does the inside the four walls of each building, when you're with your team, does that culture actually reflect that? Do the actions make people feel the way you say that you want them to feel on your website? Or does it not really align with that? And actually, I thought what you said was so insightful. It's like people need to feel like they're in a place where they're taken care of, they're supported, they're aligned with. And that doesn't come from what you put on your website. That comes with how you treat people in day-to-day scenarios, how you support people in their growth, how you sponsor people in their growth. There's so much that goes into it that's past the talk. It's easy to talk about it, but it's a lot less easy to actually live by it. And that's what I think is so nice, is that you found a place, being there for a while, and also seeing other places out there that embodies what you want to feel and what you want to build around to help other people feel that same thing in their career. So I thought it was great what you said, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking about what we were just talking about with culture, and there's probably two things, right, as an employer that we look for. We look for employees that want to do what we do for a business, as well as our why and our culture. So it's the what and the why. We talked a lot about culture, but one of the other things that I learned about myself is I like to work for a company that builds really iconic buildings and projects with a craftsmanship expertise, that self-perform crews that can really build amazing projects. That was something that I missed when I left, and coming back to it is really exciting. So there's those tangible things as well. So I think a lot of people, maybe I'm alone in it, but I think we look for both those things, right? You need the balance of both those things.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And you spent some time over the last couple of weeks in the leadership development training, and we talked a lot about the development of people within your organization, whether it be people who are more entry level, ranging up through the leadership group. And so I'm curious, what are some practices that you've seen Webcor put into play to help upskill their leaders, and how has that impacted the organization as a whole?
Right, that's actually that's a phenomenal experience that I'm going through. It's actually like 3-4 months of training. I think it's 16 sessions stretched over 3 months. We're partnered up with the Lighthouse Institute, and we have a customized leadership, I guess I'll call it a leadership development program. And it's for leaders and future leaders. And it's 16 weeks, and it's focused on the whole you. It's not focused on how do you lead, everything from your teams to your larger scale leadership levels within Webcor. But we talk a lot about our personal lives and how, what are our stressors and how do you respond to stressors, and how do you inspire and encourage the growth and development of others. And I'm only maybe 5 sessions into it, and it's phenomenal. And anyone that I've talked to within Webcor that's done it said it was life-changing. And I've found that I'm taking a lot of the content home and meeting with my husband and 3 daughters and going over some of it and sharing some of it. I'm sharing it with my team here in San Diego. It's phenomenal. And then it's partnered up with reading. Right now we're reading Jim Collins' Good to Great. It's not that we're following that verbatim. It's a little bit dated book, but it is, it's a masterpiece in terms of the fundamentals. So it touches on all aspects, and it's a lot of breakout sessions with my peers, and the group is, I don't know how big the group is, maybe about 15 to 20 of us. And we run that session continuously throughout the year. So we have it's a different mix of people, of leaders and up and coming leaders within the company. So it's an opportunity to meet and network with others within the company as well. But I can't say enough about it. It's been phenomenal.
What have you seen be some of the transformation for people who go through this program? How does it impact the organization to have people actually focus on their leadership development?
The intent of it is to really inspire and encourage a common leadership language. We spent this last session talking about our purpose and our core values, and what does that mean? What does that mean to all of us? How do we articulate it, and what does it touch within our business and within ourselves? It's really to create a common language across the business and at multiple levels within the business. And I think that's been a real foundation of the consistency of our culture, whether you're in the LA office, the San Diego office, or the multiple offices that we have in the Bay Area. It's consistent and we all kind of function as one. So it accomplishes a few things in that regard.
That's big time. Having cohesiveness within the company, within the brand, within the leadership team. I'm sure that helps, especially as you expand, because you want to bring people into new territories who have the same mentality around leadership and culture. And I think one of my biggest takeaways, kind of a funny story from that perspective, but I was working, and I'll just start with the premise. People on the team need to be bought in. They need to be all aligned, and they need to believe in what you're doing, because if you just put someone through a leadership training or throw some sort of leadership development within the company, people aren't aligned with it. The story was actually pretty funny. I was visiting a client in person in their office, and there was one portion of the office, like I'm going, here's the estimating department, here's the PMing department, et cetera, et cetera. I walk into one portion of the office, and the person who was giving me the tour, who was the HR manager, was basically like, hey, so this is our, leadership development team / like culture building team. And they came from this leadership development organization, right? So long story short, we talked to them. They seemed like totally pleasant ladies. It was just like a quick, brief conversation. I walk into the next room, and the first thing the HR manager says to me is, yeah, those people are a little bit weird. Like, those people are a little bit weird. And it was like, they were not on the team. They were they were a third-party extension who had come in to like help develop culture and help develop leaders. And for me, it just goes to show, like, you could be investing into something for your team where they're not bought in, and if they're walking away saying, oh, those are the weird people over there who are trying to help people get better, or who are trying to get people to do X, Y, Z, that could be just as well to putting your company in no direction forward and actually forming like barriers against growth. Whereas if you get people bought in to the whole process, what it's going to do for them, what it's going to do for the team, have people actually see how it's changing their life, like you're talking about, to me, that defines a successful leadership development program versus, going in the other room and saying, those are the people who are kind of off over there. I just thought it was funny, to be honest, but it sounds like you're the complete opposite of that. Your team's bought in and you all believe this could potentially is going to be life-changing for you. So that's huge.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Right now, I just sent out requests for, a 360 review. If you're familiar with that, that's where you get a holistic feedback loop to how you operate as a person and a partner and a leader. And they had all these categories you send to friends and family, supervisors, peers. There was like 5 different categories, owners, clients, and you get like a true 360 feedback loop. And the consultant within the Lighthouse Institute will work with me and go through my results. But Webcor doesn't see it. It's purely for me. And that really says something, right? Like they're not judging me. They're giving me the opportunity to take my own ownership of it and learn from it and develop from it. And I'll get guidance through the training on how to take that feedback and grow and develop. But I'm not being judged by it. It's those little things, right? It's those little things that are different.
And it really is also learning for your reasons, like contributing to your own growth, being growth-minded for your own reasons to help you level up as a person in all facets of life. I think that's such an interesting perspective versus like, hey, my company wants me to improve, which is great. I mean, companies wanting people to improve is definitely not a bad thing. But at the end of the day, when you can make it for your reasons, a lot of time people are more susceptible to actually take on to that because it's not just doing it for the company, but it's like actually doing it for yourself in many respects, which will also help everybody around you. It's kind of like helping someone come to a conclusion on their own versus convincing someone of a scenario, if that makes sense. But I think that's super powerful.
Yeah, thank you.
Love that. Well, here's the thing. So many great things going on at Webcor. Phenomenal leadership by Cecilia, and it sounds like the entire team. I've loved getting to know more about your story. And really, the way I like to finish off this podcast is, let's be honest, like a lot of people in construction would love to be in your shoes someday. What advice would you give to someone who says, hey, I'd love to be in Cecilia's shoes potentially one day? What advice would you like to share with them?
Always be willing to take on a new challenge. I think I've been fortunate that I've been asked to do a lot of different things. And I think about all the different focuses I've had throughout the years, whether I was in the scheduling department or in the field or doing marketing and PR and comms. Always be willing to take on a new challenge. It will help you grow as a person, which was really helpful for me when the recession came. I was multifaceted. And then also, look for mentors. And it's good to have multiple mentors in different ways. And most people probably already have them and don't realize it, but you can make a more structured environment for your mentorship, whether you're meeting for coffee or whatnot. And that ebbs and flows, I think, throughout the years. I know my relationships with my mentors have gotten, I've had times where I've needed a lot of mentorship, like when I failed, and then I have times where I don't talk to my mentor as often, right? So it ebbs and flows, and it's somewhat organic. And then think about those sponsorships. Do you have sponsorships where you are? And if not, how can you gain sponsorship? And be your own advocate. Take a seat at the table and lean in.
Love it. So much great information to take away from this podcast. Cecilia, I appreciate you so much for being on the show. Thank you for joining us today. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you, Matt.
Awesome.